Time now for the business news with Kate Moody. Good evening, Kate.
Hi, Delana.
You're starting off with a look at the markets after yesterday's global sell-off. How are things looking today?
Well, if we went from Black Monday, it's maybe grey Tuesday is how I'd classify it. A mixed picture. The Asian markets getting off to a strong start. Europe then disappointed, but US stocks have rebounded. Keep in mind, though, that Monday's losses represented the worst day since 2008. And the major averages in the US are still some 15% off their record highs, which were set in February. Now let's take a look at the closing bell there. We saw Wall Street rallying sharply in the final hour of trading there, gains of about 5% across the board. U.S. investors boosted by the prospect of stimulus measures from the Trump administration. The Dow Jones jumped over 1,100 points. It had lost over 2,000 on Monday. Earlier, the major European indices opened higher, but then that momentum faded, and we saw the CAC 40 and DAX losing about 1.5% each, while stocks in Milan tumbled twice that. Oil prices rose as well after plummeting 24% on Monday to their lowest level since the early 1990s. Still seeing the international benchmark of Brent trading at about $37.76 per barrel. US WTI at $34.65. For now, analysts say they expect much more market turbulence in the days and weeks to come. Well, earlier I spoke to Mickey Levy, chief economist for the US and Asia at Berenberg in New York, and asked whether the US economy really needs stimulus.
While we don't know how long temporary is, this coronavirus and its effect is temporary. And if you look out beyond it, a couple of years, the U.S. economy will get back to normal and grow at a healthy pace. However, having said that, it's clear that this, the spreading of this virus is going to affect the economy and very likely it's really having a big negative impact in March and will in April. So it's very likely to have a negative GDP quarter. Employment is likely to decline a bit, and there are a lot of people who might get laid off. A lot of what we call independent contractors, Uber drivers and the like, who will lose income, and this is to provide income support for them. So yes, it's necessary in the short run, and I think when the legislation is passed, it will be temporary legislation.
Well, meanwhile, the European Union says it will do everything necessary to limit the economic fallout from the virus outbreak. EU leaders have agreed on an investment fund worth as much as 25 billion euros, with 7.5 to be released immediately. The bloc will also ease rules on state aid and budget restrictions. For its part, Spain is opening credit lines to small businesses that are in trouble, while French President Emmanuel Macron has singled out the tourism, aviation and retail sectors as areas that could need a boost. Well, airlines have been among the most affected by the outbreak as governments impose travel restrictions and passengers cancel their trips. Air Canada joining Air France, British Airways, Ryanair and Wizz Air in suspending their Italian routes. The European Commission, meanwhile, is preparing new legislation to help carriers and allow them to stop operating so-called ghost flights with few or no passengers to hold on to their runway slots. Peter O'Brien has more.
Rows and rows of empty seats, a sign the commercial air industry is very, very unwell. Airlines have been flying near empty jets just to keep their landing slots at airports. In response, the EU is moving to suspend the rule that requires carriers to operate 4/5 of scheduled services in order to keep their slots.
We see that the situation is deteriorating on a daily basis, and traffic is expected to decline further.
An increasing number of flights are being cancelled around the world, especially those to and from China and Italy. Some carriers, like American Airlines and Delta, have withdrawn their financial forecasts for this year, faced with the extreme uncertainty. Among the many companies to have asked employees to take unpaid leave is Australian carrier Qantas, which has also slashed executive pay. Chief Exec Alan Joyce will take no salary for the rest of the financial year. He says it's survival of the fittest for the industry.
We are taking 25% of capacity out of our international operation and 5% out of our domestic operation. We're grounding around 38 aircraft in total.
Your insurer might not cover you if your flight's cancelled, though some airlines like Virgin Atlantic and Delta are letting passengers change flights instead.
Well, while pharmacies across Europe are running low on those surgical-style masks that we've seen all over the streets, one company in France has delved into its stockpile. A company called Initiatives, just to the west of Paris, had stocked up on those protective face gear back in 2009 when the H1N1 flu was spreading. The majority were never distributed, and the company has now donated 300,000 face masks to health officials in the region, all of them saying that they're very pleased to get their hands on these masks, which of course, their use for the general public is perhaps debated, Delano, but for health workers, for people who are actually dealing in direct contact with patients, they remain crucial.
Indeed, it's vital at this point in time. Thank you very much for that, Kate. Kate Moody there with a look at today's business news.